The Tale of Sidi Numan by Traditional Arabian Tale, brought to you by Tellers Network, stories from around the world. The Caliph Harun al-Rashid turned his attention to a young man in his court who had been seen treating his horse with shocking cruelty. The Caliph had witnessed this himself in the streets of Baghdad and had been so angered that he nearly revealed his identity to stop it. Now, in the privacy of his palace, he commanded the young man to explain himself.
I am called Sidi Numan.
The young man said, bowing low before the throne.
What I have done appears cruel, and I do not deny it. But I beg your highness to hear my tale before passing judgment, for the horse you saw me beating was once my wife.
The caliph leaned forward with interest.
This requires explanation indeed. Speak, and hide nothing from me.
Sidi Numan began his story.
I come from modest but respectable people, commander of the faithful. My family left me enough wealth to live comfortably, though without great luxury. I lacked only one thing for complete happiness: a wife who could share my life and return my affection. Now, as your highness knows, our customs require us to marry without ever seeing the woman who will share our days. A man has no right to complain if his bride proves acceptable in form and pleasing in manner. When the day came that my wife was brought to my house with all proper ceremonies, I lifted her veil and found myself enchanted. Her beauty exceeded all that had been promised to me. The first days of our marriage filled me with joy. My wife, whose name was Amina, seemed everything a man could desire: graceful, intelligent, and kind. But on the very next day after our wedding, something strange occurred that troubled me greatly. When the hour came for our midday meal, servants brought rice and many fine dishes. I ate in the normal way, using my spoon as any person would, but Amina drew from her robes a small case from which she took a long, thin pin. With this pin, she began to eat her rice grain by grain, taking only the smallest morsels into her mouth. My dear wife, is this how you have been taught to eat? If you have concern for our household expenses, put from your mind. We have sufficient means, and I would have you eat your fill and be satisfied. She made no answer, but continued her peculiar manner of eating. Throughout the meal, she consumed perhaps 3 grains of rice and a crumb of bread that would not satisfy a sparrow. The same pattern continued at supper and on every day that followed. It became clear that no woman could survive on such meager portions, yet Amina showed no signs of hunger or weakness. Some nights, I would wake to find her place beside me empty. When I questioned her in the morning, she claimed she had risen to pray or could not sleep and had walked in the garden. Yet there was something in her eyes, a wildness I could not understand, that left me uneasy. One night, the full moon shone bright through our windows, and I awoke to hear the soft sound of the door closing. Through the lattice, I saw Amina slipping through the garden toward the street gate. Sleep abandoned me entirely, and I decided I must discover the truth of her nightly wanderings. I wrapped a dark cloak around myself and followed her through the silent streets. She moved with unnatural grace and swiftness, taking paths through the city I had never seen, though I had lived there all my life. At last she led me beyond the walls to the ancient cemetery, a place of old tombs and monuments where even brave men fear to venture in daylight. I concealed myself behind a stone tomb and watched in growing horror. Amina approached a freshly dug grave, and there I saw her meet with another figure, a female ghoul, one of those demons that feast upon the dead. Together, they opened the grave and began to consume the corpse that lay within, speaking together as casually as if they were sharing a normal meal. My blood turned to ice in my veins. The woman I had married, who shared my bed and my home, was a creature that fed upon the flesh of the dead. When they had finished their horrible feast, they returned the body to its grave, and Amina made her way back toward our house. I returned before her and pretended to be asleep when she slipped back into bed beside me. For many days, I struggled with this terrible knowledge. Should I confront her? Should I flee? When I looked at her during the day, tending our home, smiling at me with apparent love, she seemed so perfectly human that I began to doubt what I had witnessed. Perhaps it had been merely a nightmare, I told myself, though I knew in my heart this was not true. Finally, I could bear the deception no longer. One evening after our meal, I took her hands and looked into her eyes. Amina, I must ask you a question, and I beg you to answer truthfully. Where do you go when you leave our bed at night? Her expression changed instantly. Her eyes grew cold and her grip tightened until her nails dug into my flesh.
What do you mean?
She asked, her voice taking on an inhuman quality. I followed you to the cemetery. I saw what you are. I know you feast upon the dead with the ghouls. For a moment, she stared at me in silence. Then she spoke words I did not understand and threw water from a nearby vessel into my face.
Wretch! Receive the punishment for your spying and become a dog.
Instantly, commander of the faithful, I felt my form change. Where I had been a man, I became a dog, though my mind remained my own. Amina seized a stick and began to beat me with terrible force. The pain roused me from my shock, and I fled into the courtyard with her pursuing me. She opened the street gate, intending to crush me as I passed through, but I timed my escape well. Only the tip of my tail was caught as the gate slammed shut. I ran howling through the streets, my injured tail causing me great pain. Other dogs attacked me, and I took refuge in a cook shop where tongues and sheep's heads were sold. The owner drove away my attackers, and I crept into a dark corner to hide. He was a kind man but considered dogs unclean, so when morning came, he would not let me remain inside his shop. I wandered the streets until I came to a baker's shop. The baker was eating his breakfast, and though I showed no particular sign of hunger, he threw me a piece of bread. Before eating it, I bowed my head and wagged my tail in thanks. This seemed to please him greatly, and he smiled and gestured for me to come into his shop. From that day forward, the baker treated me with remarkable kindness. He gave me a corner where I could sleep and shared his meals with me. I tried to show my gratitude in every way I could, sitting with my eyes fixed upon him and following him whenever he left the shop. He called me Rufus and seemed genuinely fond of me. One day, a woman came to buy bread and laid down several coins in payment. The baker examined them and pushed one back to her.
This coin is false. Give me another in its place.
The woman protested that all her coins were good. The baker, perhaps in jest, called to me,
Rufus, come here and show this woman which coin is bad.
I jumped onto the counter and looked at each coin in turn. When I came to the false one, I placed my paw upon it and looked at the baker. The woman was amazed and embarrassed, and admitted the baker spoke the truth. Word of my ability spread quickly, and soon the shop was filled with customers who came to test me. The baker's trade flourished, and he told me often that I was worth my weight in gold. One day, a woman I had never seen before came to the shop. She laid down 6 coins, one of which was false. I immediately placed my paw upon it. She nodded slowly and studied me with great attention. After paying for her bread, she made a subtle gesture for me to follow her. Something in her look gave me hope that she might understand my true nature. When the baker was occupied with his oven, I slipped out and followed her through the streets to her house. She opened the door and said,
Come in, come in. You will never regret following me.
Inside, a beautiful young woman was working at embroidery.
My daughter, I have brought the famous dog from the baker's shop. As I told you, I believe he is truly a man transformed by magic.
The daughter rose and dipped her hand into a vessel of water. Sprinkling it over me, she said,
If you were born a dog, remain a dog. But if you were born a man, by the power of this water, return to your true form.
In that instant, the spell broke, the dog's shape vanished, and I stood before them as a man once more. I fell to my knees in gratitude. How can I ever thank you for what you have done? I am forever in your debt.
There is no debt. I am pleased to help you. Now, I knew your wife Amina before her marriage. She is indeed a powerful magician, and I studied the same arts under the same teacher, though we were never friends. But it is not enough merely to break the spell she cast on you. She must be punished for her wickedness. Wait here a moment.
She left the room and returned shortly with a small bottle.
I have consulted my books, and learned that Amina is away from your house at this moment, but she will return soon. She has told your servants that you left the house in haste and that a dog wandered in which she drove away with a stick. Go home now and wait for her return. When she enters, confront her with this bottle ready. Throw the water upon her and say these words, "Receive the punishment for your crimes." That is all you must do.
I thanked them both with all my heart and returned to my house. Everything was exactly as the young magician had described. I had not waited long when Amina appeared. As I stepped forward, she cried out in shock and turned to flee. But I was quicker. I threw the water from the bottle upon her and spoke the words I had been taught. Receive the punishment for your crimes. In an instant, Amina vanished. In her place stood the horse that your highness saw me beating in the street. This, commander of the faithful, is the truth of my story. I know my treatment of the horse appears harsh, but when I look at it, I see not merely an animal but the wife who deceived me and transformed me into a beast. Can your highness blame me for the bitterness I feel?
The Caliph considered Sidi Numan's words carefully.
Your story is indeed extraordinary, and I do not condemn your actions, for your wife's wickedness was great. Yet I would ask you to reflect on this. She has now been punished severely by being changed into an animal, just as you were. Let that punishment be enough. I do not command you to seek a way to restore her human form, for I know that such women, once they begin to work evil, rarely cease. To restore her might only bring greater vengeance upon your head. But I do ask that you treat the horse with some measure of mercy. She has been transformed, as you were, and perhaps in time the memory of your suffering will fade, and you will find it in your heart to show kindness even to her.
Sidi Numan bowed low before the Caliph.
Your highness is wise and just. I will do as you counsel.
And so ends the tale of Sidi Numan and his wife Amina, who was both beautiful and terrible, and whose secrets led to transformations most strange and punishments most fitting.